All right, guys, for agreements, pages 99, 100, and 101. So, let me get to my notes. So, this few pages kind of breaks down more about this topic of awareness, and it goes into these other, mastery of awareness, mastery of transformation, and mastery of intent. So, page 99 has this cool quote. It says, you will find that you suffered all those years of drama for nothing. Why? Because the belief system that was put inside your mind is based on lies. And then, um, like I was kind of thinking about that, and like a situation came up the other day where, I've got a friend who could probably be a pro athlete. We've known each other for ages, and they've always had an inclination towards, athletics, but, they, they're in the military, they, were training for like some type of like, let's call it police academy or something along those lines. Like they've done a lot of, you know, job uh job related tasks, or pursued a lot of jobs that um were related to, some form of athleticism. um and they used to run in high school before that, and we're on some school teams, and we played in a sports league together, and we used to play sports at school together. So and they used to do martial arts as a kid. So the whole time I've known this person, they've been very athletic. um Maybe not the most social person on earth, but like they've got a lot of qualities where, say meeting somebody would be, in my head, I'm like, it should be easy for this person. Like, why, they've got a good job, a really great career, they'll be able to retire early, they're in really good fit shape, very healthy, and, they take their health very seriously, probably more than most people that I know. And, it was interesting to me that, I mean, everybody has their insecurities, but it was kind of interesting to me, that you know there was some kind of conversation around, like, that they have something coming up that seems like, there's a little anxiety about it, like socially. And I'm just thinking, like, why would a person who has things pretty put together, be, anxious about, like, because it's hard for me to see, like why would they even worry about this upcoming situation that they have to deal with. Like, they're good, like, they're they've got a nice place, a nice car, a nice job, a nice, things are kind of set up for them, like they're pretty stable. So I'm like, why, compared to most of the people I know, this person honestly is probably one of the more stable, independent people that I know. Hasn't really had to switch careers, hasn't really had to go back to school between this economic decline or the other. They've just been steady, kind of going with their career path, and been doing really well. And by the time the rest of us kind of have it figured out, they'll be almost ready for retirement. And I'm like, a lot of people that I knew around that other economic situation did, a lot of them got laid off. This is when I was like starting grad school. A lot of them, or I was already in grad school. A lot of my other friends were getting laid off and ended up going back to school, back to grad school, getting a master's degree or a different degree or something. And now we're in this other economic issue. And I'm noticing another, situation with a lot of people either going back to school or, now I feel like a lot of my friends are kind of like older, so a lot of us maybe are just getting trained in other fields and going into other places and just doing things like that. And I was like, okay, like everybody's kind of almost doing the same thing, but not quite going back to school because most of us are like, I don't want more debt. So a lot of the millennial generation, the elder millennial generation, is more like, I don't really want to go back to school again at at this rate because we've already had like maybe one or two careers by this point. A lot of people I know have majored in one thing, went to school, got like a whole job. That happened to me. Like I was trying to go into research and then over and over again I kept getting declined with them saying, you don't have clinical experience, you don't have clinical experience. So that's how I landed in San Diego, trying to get into a doctoral program to get clinical experience. The goal was to get a PhD, do the clinical experience, and then go back into research and psych. And, the PhD part didn't happen. And it kind of landed me into clinical work because I just kind of went with the flow of where the practicums led me into jobs. But again, I wasn't licensed. And so there's no real room to really move up unless you keep switching jobs. And the jobs are ultra stressful and they don't pay that good. I mean, I've seen jobs that pay maybe max like 32 to 36 an hour, and that's in California before taxes, um, before your like healthcare deductions, before contributing to retirement. Like you really can't make much less than 40 an hour out here. Um, and so I kind of know the math, and so I'm like, even 30, 36, 29 an hour, that sounds nice. That's a lot of money, but it's like if you are serious about saving and investing and doing things to the T with the like, living off, whatever your rent being like a third of your income and all that kind of stuff, you need to be making quite a lot of money so that you're not like in debt. Like I've noticed a lot of places do have it, so you have to make 2.5 times the rent. Your income has to be 2.5 times. But yeah, like I was just a little bit like, okay, like of all the people I know, this is the one person that I'm not the kind of person who goes around like, oh, you shouldn't have any problems. But this was like the one person that I was like a little bit like, oh, I didn't know that this would come up for this person. And for me, I'm like looking at them and I'm like, dude, like you should have no problem. Like not to like invalidate, but I'm just like they don't see themselves as they really are, you know. They have a perspective of themselves. And I'm mentioning this because all of us have this, right? Like all of us have this kind of perspective of ourselves where we're like, I'm not good enough at this, or like nobody would want to date me because of this, or nobody would want to hire me because of this, or like, that person was looking at me weird because of my race, or like, maybe some of it's true, but I feel like uh, that quote about you will find that you suffered all those years of drama for nothing. It's talking about you know um, that level of awareness. We think sometimes that we have awareness of ourselves and of our current condition and our current situation, but that awareness can be skewed because a lot of times as an individual, what we will focus on is our flaws. I can tell I'm like, oh, like maybe I should have been nicer that day, or maybe I should have been more energetic, or maybe I should have maybe not had edibles, that early in the morning and thrown off all my plans, or maybe I should have not, you know, um, you know, uh, thought about this in that way, or gotten into that pattern for a week, or eaten those snacks or whatever, avoided that, skip that workout or skip that, gig, that day of like making money through these gigs or whatever. Like maybe I shouldn't have skipped it, maybe, or even more like deeper level stuff too. But it's like, it's easy for me to just like point out things and be like, oh, like I'm being lazy today, or I'm being, unorganized today, or, I've got this going on or that going on. And then it's hard for me to kind of see, what I'm actually doing. I'm like, I mean, when I think of it, is like I've literally created a job for myself out of thin air, like just by studying analytics. I've literally just created my own job. I mean, that's not easy. And I mean, with all these platforms, with all that they've been changing and making it so that I had to start over from scratch again, like two or three times already, it's like, I don't even know how I figured this out, but I have. But there's only so much energy a person has, to deal with the disappointment and deal with all these platform changes. And like, now I got to be a subscriber to this, and all my subscriptions cost more money. And a month goes by really fast, and it's like, okay, now I'm spending $39 a month on this, and $18.99 a month on this, and $5 a month on this, and like $9.99 a month on this. And it's like, plus car insurance and all these things. It adds up, It's like, just to be making money, to have all these things open, cost me money. It cost me money to be making money. So that right now is becoming the biggest issue. But it's like, most people right by now would have quit trying to do what it is that I've been trying to do for the past like 8 months. Like, most people would have given up. They would have quit. They would have been like, no way am I gonna like try and do this, and would have taken any job and been like, screw this, I'm out. And I've been sticking it out. I'm stubborn as hell with a lot of stuff. When it comes to projects and things, I'm like, this is gonna work. Like, I need to figure out why it's not working. If it's not working, like, I at least need the answer to why it might not be working, even if I'm not gonna follow through with it. But it's like, this needs to work, So yeah, that was kind of the main thing that I had kind of been interested in. Um, I was, I guess, kind of um, yeah, that was kind of the main kind of example that kind of came to mind. And I'm not putting my friend's business all out there. I mix things up, so like, there's no way this person's identifiable. I mix it up. Like, I'm not even saying like exact details of what they actually do. I'm just kind of like mixing it up as an example. But it's like, yeah, the person that I'm talking about, really, their life is so stable on the surface, at least from what I can view, from what I know, from when I catch up with this person. I'm like, I'm happy. I'm happy for them. I'm not like, oh, I wish that was me or whatever. But I'm like, they're clearly doing something right. Of everyone I know who's having health problems, I don't know about them having any health issues. Of everyone I know who is trying to like search for work or move out from their parents or whatever it may be, like, a lot of people where I live in LA, a lot of us are living with their parents. This person I know from LA, they're not living with their parents. They're able to move. They've got a solid career. They're advancing in their career. Like I said, they're going to be able to retire. Like, a lot of us are just like scrambling in comparison to how this person is doing. So, it was a little surprising for me to hear. And the reason why I mention it, though, is because I think a lot of us would be in that situation if somebody else was looking at our life. Like, usually the thing that we think about ourselves, where we're like, oh man, I could be better at this or better at that. Like, for me right now, it's more of like the job thing. Like, I know why I don't have a 9 to 5. It's because I don't really want one right now. And because, like, I do want one, but I kind of also don't. Like, I want a specific one, but I'm very picky. And then I also a I want a specific one, and I want want to um uh yeah, I want to kind of, continue with all that I've been learning. I'm I wouldn't say I'm completely self-taught. I'm a little self-taught. I'm mostly self-taught, but I have invested in some classes in the last year. So I've probably spent a total of maybe $1,300, 1,300 on three different types of courses. Um, and definitely tried a lot of different stuff that I've always been wanting to try. Um, and so it's like right now it's like I'm in like a passion year in a way. Um, I'm enjoying myself, but also it's like it's a lot to try to wrap my head around, like how to do something like this. I don't have a lot of examples of people I know who actually do this kind of stuff. Um, I mean, I have a community of people online who do this kind of stuff through like the courses and the discords and things. A lot of us are very like-minded, and we're all kind of like, dude, we did the 9 to 5. Like, we know how much we got screwed by these companies. A lot of us know we were getting used and abused by these companies just because we had a good work ethic. They sought that out in us and kind of took advantage, and they're like, well, we're just going to pay you crumbs. And a lot of people had this experience, and I think that's what happened during the Rona. A lot of people were like, no more, no more. Like, I'm not going back to my job when unemployment is paying me more than I was getting in the first place. Like, I'm not going back to my job when I've been able to prove that I can work remotely and get more done and be more efficient and get my job done. Like, why would I go into the office, waste the time and the gas and the energy and the effort and the money? Um, you know, it's time out of your day. It's faster to wake up, shower, eat breakfast, get dressed and log in online and just skip the commute. And depending where you live, especially if you live in a city like LA or somewhere where the traffic is like nuts or where you have like a weird uh, schedule, you're not going to want to deal with all that. Nobody wants to deal with all that. So, yeah, I've kind of just come to a realization, that like everyone's kind of been trying something different. Like, there's also been like a spiritual awakening. People are way more interested in topics about spirituality, topics about how to make money on your own. Um, these fields are very important. People are like, I want to take more initiative of my own opportunities, of my own life without like somebody telling me, oh, you have to have this degree to go do this thing. You have to go give money to this system to go be eligible to do this other thing, which, like doctors and things, like I wouldn't want a doctor that never went to school. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't want that, but it's like, I don't know. Like, it's it's kind of, it can be a little bit confusing, and the next part, the book starts going into, like I said, these three uh mastery issues, and one of them is awareness, the other one is transformation, and the last one is intent. So with awareness, having awareness is, having an ability to decipher kind of who we really are. So kind of like that example I was giving is like, yeah, we all have skewed perspectives of ourselves, uh, because of the victim and the judge and the and the domestication and the just kind of what cultures teach, and then lived experiences. We develop this mindset about who we are, what we are, you know but it's not accurate, right? It's based on false information. Like, my friend very likely has some false views of themselves. Maybe they're like expanding, or highlighting certain parts of themselves that they find as something that maybe didn't work out in the past or something that they want to improve, but they're thinking, oh, those things that they want to improve or maybe that went wrong in the past, that's that's like 90% of myself, and 10% of myself is like, oh, like I have a good job, a good career, I'm financially set. Like they just discount all the rest of that stuff. They're like, we're not even going to count that. Versus when you look from the outside, me not being that person, I'm like, wow, this person is really self-made and is doing really good, and I'm really happy for them that they've got all these qualities that they're like advancing, and they're doing like, I feel honestly, of all my friends, this is the one person that, one of the people, not, I mean, I don't want to put it this way, but like a lot of us had, I grew up in an area where a lot of us had parents that were very much like, they knew what to do. They had the resources to let us do what we needed. So, they would take us to camps in the summer. They would pay for us to do this or pay for us to do that. And, they had the resources to do it versus this other friend, they didn't grow up like that. You know, their parents weren't like getting them cars or like taking them places or all that kind of stuff. Like if they wanted to go somewhere, they had to take a bus. If they wanted to go somewhere, they had to do this or they had to do that. So because they didn't have like a parent who was really like able to kind of give them all the things that most of my other friends and my parents were able to give us, they kind of did struggle. Like they had to work more during college and had to choose between like, okay, can I actually afford to like pay for like the stuff that I have to pay for in my household, contribute to like groceries or whatever, as well as, like contribute, as well as, be able to still hang out and have fun and spend money doing that and work and go to class. They'd have to decide. Versus us, it's like, you know, our folks might give us some money, to go do what we need, or like we would use our financial aid, or, we just be in school all the time and we go to classes all the time and we were busy all the time, and we were in households where we were allowed to study all the time. Like that was my job, study, study and get your degrees done. No one in my family was like, you need to go work and start contributing to the household like that. Like, no, the way I contribute to the household is I go get a degree. You know what I mean? And so that was like, just that kind of stuff was like different. And so I know that like that person, this friend of mine, because their life was so different, like I don't think that I saw them falling behind. It wasn't like that, but it was like their life was definitely different, but they were able to get into the career that was, that maybe they were forced into it. I don't think they were willingly trying to go into it, but now, it's a stable career, and their career is more stable than most of the rest of ours. And so it's like, you know, whatever they did that they may have been a little upset with before, or that maybe they would have felt like, oh, I'm maybe not as good as these other people or whatever. All the rest of us are back living at home with our parents. You know what I mean? So it's like, you know, um, when I look at that, I'm like, they should be proud and happy of themselves, and like, you know, but they don't see it that way. They're seeing something else that, to me, whatever it is that they're seeing is probably like a little mild minor thing that I'm like, oh, like that happened like 20 years ago or whatever, like whatever. Like, but they might be magnifying it and being like, oh, like this thing happened, or like, like, or, like when people who have degrees, sometimes people can look at like, oh, all my friends have all these degrees or whatever, but it's like, that's not really the case. Just because you have a degree doesn't mean you have a job you like, doesn't mean that you have a job where you can advance, doesn't mean that you have a job. Like I had steady work where I could not advance for like 7 years. Just about, it was 5 years and maybe 2 years. but I had steady work where I couldn't even advance. And it's like, what's the point in that? Like, why have steady work when you can't advance? It's like the economy's changing. I need to be able to advance, you know, and that just wasn't an option. So it's like I kind of put all my eggs in that basket, most of my eggs in that basket. But the thing about me is I'm always in the background, kind of like I have all these nerdy interests, and that that I'm like, okay, like when I have time, I want to do this, I want to do that, and when I just had that little bit extra of time uh, during the Rona in 2020, I was like, let me just start podcasting. That was the easiest thing to do because I was already doing audio journaling, so I was like, well, I might as well just go do that while I'm doing this too, and just see what happens. Because I wanted to create content, but I was like, I don't want to do video content, and not really. And blogging's cool, but it's like it's hit or miss if I actually feel like I'm gonna want to do it. Um, Sometimes it can feel more like a chore, but yeah, I was like, this is great. Let me just put some stuff out there. So yeah, like I think, with awareness, it really is hard, master of awareness. Most of us don't really see who we really are. We see a skewed version of what we think other people see, or a magnified version of flaws that we have. And it's like, you know, we all have flaws, but it's like sometimes the way we look at ourselves, we're magnifying some other thing that other people might never even think about. They might never look at it and be like, oh, like that's nuts. I could take something, for example, with myself, right? Like doing Uber Eats deliveries. Like I do it for the money as I need the money, right? So it's not like I'm doing it and I'm like, oh, I love this job. Like I'm over it. Like I'm bored of it. I'm not learning much more. It's kind of like a waste of my time sometimes. And so I'm like, but it's work. You do a job and you get money. So, for example, I've got a friend that doesn't really know that I do Uber Eats. I haven't really told them. The reason why is because I was telling them the other stuff I was doing, and then they started talking about somebody that they were dating that was doing, or that they had gone out on a date with, like early stages of going out on a date with someone, and finding out that this person was driving Uber Eats. And they're like, well, or Uber, I think they were just doing like the rides. And they're like, that's not really work. So like, blah, blah, blah. And so like, I was like, well, I'm not even going to bother telling this person that that's what I've been doing lately, because they look down on it so much. And then I've got another friend that's like totally positive about it. That's like, yeah, like it's good, that you can make money, and like, and they're right, like you can cash out every day. It does pay, so you do get money every day. And it's like when you do it, if you do get orders, you do get money every day. And so it's like they're able to kind of pinpoint, okay, like this is a good part about that. Like maybe you're looking a little too negatively about this other stuff. And it kind of gave me, it kind of depends who you're talking to. Someone who's worked maybe in psych or has degrees and is around a bunch of people with a bunch of degrees might not really think about jobs like Uber Eats as being like real work, in quotations, like real work, right? Like, and then someone else who's, doing another type of job can probably see the benefit of, hey, you have a car, you're able to like drive around and make money when you feel like it, versus being bound to like, take public transit all the way across town, and like the effort and energy that takes, and the weather can suck, and like you're spending your money to do that, and you're at the mercy of this transit to get you places on time. And I could see how that could be stressful. It's like your work is limited by having to take public transportation very far. Your energy is going to be limited because you're spending a lot of time, with the transportation situations, and then you're having to spend money every day doing that. Um, Or if it doesn't work, you got to Uber and spend a lot of money just to get to work on time because you can't be late like every day. And, and having to leave like excessively early, like instead of, leaving like pretty early, like having to leave like really early just to get to work on time, stuff like that is like, I can see like places where it's like, well, maybe I'm not counting my blessings, maybe I'm not practicing enough gratitude sometimes. And that's kind of where I see, this awareness, mastery of awareness. So the transformation, mastery of transformation talks about being free of domestication. So free of domestication is like, all the stuff that your culture teaches. If you grew up in a religion, if you grew up with some kind of like ethnic type of traditions, if you grew up with just, stuff based on your socioeconomic status and what resources you did or didn't have, and all these things, like, and especially as a child, you get taught these things. The people who teach you the way that they were taught, and then later in life we start realizing, hey, some of this stuff just doesn't work for me, you know and trying to shed ourselves of the stuff that doesn't work turns out to be a very difficult process, because we're so used to it, but we were domesticated into being as we are now. And a lot of what we do is programmed. A lot of how I think, a lot of how I think negatively is programmed. A lot of my mood, or like how I approach things socially, like, I live in a house where, I grew up with some bitter, grumpy people. And so if I'm in a mood, it's not something that I wasn't taught to not be grumpy or bitter, because I witness that on an almost daily basis, that somebody's grumpy and bitter all the time. And so it's like I notice myself kind of being like that sometimes. And now I kind of realize, okay, maybe I just need a little caffeine. Maybe I just need to eat a meal. Maybe I need to drink more water. It's usually something that's tied directly to, something that I needed to get taken care of. Maybe I needed to sleep more. Usually it's not the other person that's, yeah, I'll get annoyed, but usually it's not the other person. Usually it's because I'm lacking in something and not taking the best care of myself, which is why my energy fluctuates, and then being around, people or places where like people cook based on how they feel. They're like, oh, it was a stressful day or whatever, so I'm gonna, make these instant unhealthy lasagnas, or I'm gonna make this instant unhealthy thing, or create this really unhealthy meal and buy cake and ice cream and cookies. And I was raised around, people who are like, drinking sodas all the time. And you know like, even though I was around like a health conscious kind of message with religion, I was also raised around people who had, like, when I look at my family on both sides, I've got a lot of the elders in our family, like my aunts, uncles, uh, all my grandparents. Pretty much everybody had health complications uh, when they passed away. And then, even with my aunts and uncles, the ones who have passed, they've pretty much all passed from health complications. And there are a lot of them now that still have health complications. And a lot of it is based on diet. It's based on lack of exercise. It's based on having too much stress and not having money to really either eat healthy or to have your body in a de-stressed state with lower cortisol levels to be able to make those healthy choices, because you will choose to eat crappy food when you feel crappy. Um, so not only is it the money thing, it's also how you feel. And then, people overworking and overdoing it and not balancing their lifestyles, making it so that they're stressed, but having to do that so that they can make ends meet. And so just being raised around some aspects of people in poverty, some aspects of people with limited opportunities, that contributes to diet issues, that contributes to nutrition problems, to health problems, and mood issues and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, I realized a while ago when I was working in the job that I'm working in, I'm like, I can't keep doing this because I see myself going down those routes that all these other elder family members are going down. And I see it. I'm like, okay, like I'm gaining weight because I'm eating like them. Like my mind is all like, I worry about this, or like I'm, irritable like this, or I have sleep problems like this. And I kind of can pinpoint like who in my family has those issues and what they're doing and what's similar of what I'm doing to what they're doing. And I can kind of look around and just see it. And I'm like, no, I got to change this. I got to change that. Like right now, I'm at an age where I can change all these things. And, I'm going to my doctors and I'm making these appointments and I'm, trying my best to, keep everything kind of keep it all rolling and going well. And I'm trying. Like that's all I can really do, right? Is to try. But I'm trying, and you know, they um yeah, like that's all I can really say is like I'm trying to follow doctor's recommendations. The thing that gets in my way really is the munchies. Like having cannabis products and then having the munchies, that is where I fall short because I'm like, now I'm eating extra stuff that I would not even have thought to want to eat. That, it's easy for me to avoid cookies and all that kind of stuff and chips. And it's mostly cookies and chips, but because we have those snack size things in the house, I eat them. So I try to get perfect bars or like corn chips and salsa and like have some boiled eggs, just kind of like ready to eat and like things like that. It's like little things where I'm like, it's slightly healthier than, a little mini pack of Oreos, 140 calories of Oreos versus, some chips and salsa, like the chips and salsa are better, are a better option. But, I think about things like that and I'm like, okay, I am making slightly healthier choices. And I've got some family members that I take the pictures of what I eat sometimes and send it to them just to motivate them. Like today, I tried this field roasted. No, it's called Field Roast. That's the brand from Sprouts. They didn't have the hot dogs I wanted, but they had these Italian style sausages, but they're like vegan, vegetarian. It's vegetable based, and so I was basically ready to try one of those. So I put it in the oven. It was kind of dry, but I ate it anyways. I think you're supposed to saute it actually, which it said, but I was like, I don't want to sit in front of the because I was doing other stuff. I was like, I don't want to sit in the kitchen, so I'll throw it in the oven while I'm boiling eggs, and I can go get some other stuff done for about 20 minutes or so. And so I didn't cook it properly, but that's why it was dry. But I was like, okay, that's a vegetable based protein that I ate with some eggs with avocado toast, and I got a tomato out of the garden. I got 4 tomatoes, but I got one for breakfast that I ate, sliced it up, put it on top of the avocado toast and some onions I chopped up and just put some black pepper and then some salt and pepper on my eggs and like I'm good. That was my breakfast. Versus, other things that I see people eat for breakfast in my family, like a slice of spam, like maybe like a bowl of cereal with a bagel, like a lot of carbs, like too much carbs, um, things like that. That I'm like, I try to be really careful. Like when my dad cooks, he cooks a lot of African food, and there's something. It has like a lot of names. You could call it papa, you can call it istwala, you could call it salsa. It's basically the starch base. Um, and when he cooks, he usually makes like a whole half plate of it. It's like half the plate is carbs, and the other half the plate is something else. And I'm like, well, I feel like maybe a quarter of the plate should be carbs, not a whole half of the plate. But also, they eat so late. Like, they'll cook and be eating like after 8 p.m., like closer to 9 p.m. And I'm like, dude, I'm eating dinner usually 8 p.m. at the latest, but usually before 6, I've eaten dinner. Like, it's very rare that I'll eat dinner after 6 p.m. Um, a lot of times I'll eat dinner at 4 p.m., or 5 and then snack later. But yeah, so things like that. I'm like, I can see how I was raised and I can see the things that were beneficial, like having the schedule I had every day. And we weren't really homebodies all the time. Like, we go to school Monday through Friday, and then Friday nights we'd always have activities we could go out to do from the time I was a teen. And then Saturdays we were at church, and Sundays we played sports. So it was like that pretty much from second grade all the way till like my first year of grad school. I pretty much kept that same routine. And then the thing I dropped off of in grad school was pretty much the sports. But I was, walking on and off campus every day for like the first year. I think it was once I got to the second year, that's when I started staying late on campus and, started getting a little bit lazier, a little bit more exhausted. And so I wasted a lot of money, didn't even get a parking permit, and paid the daily pass every day. Let's say it was $7, $6. I don't know how much it was, but I didn't even get the parking permit, and I just paid every day for daily parking because I wasn't there every day. I was there like 2 or 3 days a week. And sometimes if I wouldn't stay late, I'd park off campus. But I did get into a bad habit of starting to park on campus and paying to do it every day. Um, Paying the individual fees every single morning. I would do that. And then, so I started doing that every day. Um, Especially because I think one of my friends that used to always walk with me, we had different schedules. And so I was like, I don't think I should be walking at like 10:30 at night in these neighborhoods. And so, like, it's not the best neighborhood. Like, Cal State LA is not placed in really the best neighborhood to be walking around in the middle of the night. It's not the worst neighborhood, but it's like, I feel like if people kind of know that you're doing it, it might not be a good idea. But that's when I started gaining weight more, was when I stopped doing those walks. And then ever since then, I've been less and less and less active. Uh, there were times where I picked up activity, and like when I first moved to San Diego, I definitely went to the gym a lot more. Like almost every day after work, I just stopped by the gym. And I did that when I worked in Chula Vista too. I would kind of stop by the gym like a lot of days. But when I started, anytime in my life when I started relying more on instant foods and cutting out my workouts, that's when things always went south. And I've had a few uh, years where that has happened in my life. And this last year in 2022 and before 2022, so probably like 2021 as well, like those were probably a couple of my least active years. I stopped hiking all the time. I stayed in more. Most of my hobbies, I did actually do some training for snowboarding for like 2020. I think it was for 2020 or 2021. Maybe for the 2021 season. Whatever year it was that I went to Taos, New Mexico. Um, but yeah, I did do a little bit. And then this season's coming up. So most of my financial motivation right now is, to try to pump up the funds to be able to, afford some extravagant trips. Like for me, extravagant, it's like staying 3 days at Bear or something. Like to me, that's like fine, but it just takes a lot. I call it extravagant because I can't drive any of my old cars, so I have to like get a rental, and I'm not driving in the mountains with like a 20-year-old car. Like that's not gonna happen. Um, but yeah, stuff like that. I'm just uh like when I look around and I look at like some of my older family members and kind of like what's not going well with them, I'm like, well, they've had these sedentary lifestyles, none of them exercises, they eat this kind of country diet with a lot of just like they eat a country diet as if they were out working in the fields, but people aren't doing that much manual labor anymore. So it's like the diet still stays the same, but nobody's burning off the calories like they would have been like a couple generations back. And so it's like now that diet doesn't really fit, but people have kind of kept the tradition of those foods. And so, and I think it's the same with the African foods too. Like people keep the traditions of those foods. And so, I've got my Midwest family and my African family, and then everybody's got these cultures of unhealthy eating, but now with way more sedentary lifestyles. Because there's one thing if you're eating like a whole bunch of carbs and beef and like, you know, um, meats and all this kind of stuff, but it's like, yeah, if you're out working in the field or walking really far or, doing a lot of active stuff every day, I mean, it's still gonna matter if you eat healthy. Like you still need vegetables and fruits and stuff, but it's it's gonna be a lot more. It's gonna make a lot more sense to not do it that way. It's gonna make a lot more sense to um to you know go and um I don't know. It's just gonna make a lot more sense to just change the diet to your lifestyle. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do. And I'm lucky that I live in Southern California because, it's a very health conscious place. So, literally, to eat unhealthy, I do have to kind of go out of my way. Like, I have to find like a Taco Bell or a McDonald's, but it's like there's also a Sprouts right there. There's also an H Mart right there. There's Japanese markets. There's a Japanese market right by the gym that I go to. The other gym that I go to, there's like an urban place right there. Um, there's a bookstore right across the street with some healthy meal related choices. There's a Mitsuwa Japanese market. Like there's plenty of markets that are healthy where I could just pop in, buy some food and be on my way. Like I don't have to eat unhealthy stuff. Like if I go out and run errands, I could easily just go drive Uber Eats, make 20, 25 bucks, go buy some food, you know. I mean 20, 25 bucks isn't going to get me that far, but it's like I could figure out dinner on 25 bucks. Especially from a store, I could probably get something that'll last me a couple days. Considering that we do have other food in the house. So it's like stuff like that. It just takes a little bit of like planning it out, versus just going with the status quo and going with the regular routine of like, oh, parent cooks this or someone else in the family influences the parent to cook this and then I just eat it without even thinking about, oh, was this even in my plans to be eating cake today? Was this even in my plans to be eating cupcakes? Was this in my plans to be eating cookies? Like, no, like this wasn't my plan today. My plan was to maybe wait till Friday to eat any cookies at all. And now I find myself eating it because somebody made it. So stuff like that. It's like, you know, um, and the family kind of knows that I'm a little more health conscious with my eating. And so they do kind of try to cook a little bit more tailored. Like sometimes when my dad cooks, he'll put some more vegetables and stuff. Or when my mom cooks, she'll make like muffins, like healthy muffins instead of like cupcakes or something like that. So there's a little bit of like, okay, like this is a little bit healthier than what it would have been. But then there's still the cycle of people still buying the stuff that I should not be eating as much as I do. So things like that, simple things like that, it's like I can kind of see um, what's going on. And it's not just all about the food and stuff. There's emotional stuff. There's just the way people handle their finances, all that stuff. I've been taught and kind of pressured towards, like I mentioned before, I've got a family member that does not understand why I don't like overspending past my budget, why I don't want to go travel and go on these extravagant traveling trips with them, um, sightseeing and all that. And it's not that it's not important to me. It's just that this isn't the best year for that. Um, the last one, it talks about intent. So they label intent, the mastery of they label the mastery of intent. They say it's a type of energy some people refer to as God or the mastery of love. So this looks at judgment, it looks at the victim, and the belief system as a parasite. So pretty much all that stuff with the domestication, with that comes the judge that says, you know, um, that tells me who I'm really not because of myself judging myself, and then the victim mentality that also tells me who I'm not, that tells me what I can or can't get over, because of something that happened in the past, even if it's not directly impacting me today. Like, yeah, memories and like experiences and stuff that happened, but it's not actively happening now. So it's like, all the stuff that the mind says that's like why you can't get over this, or why you have to keep being cautious and bringing it up and thinking on it, when it's like it's not even something that's relevant to my day-to-day life. um and belief systems, depending what they are, um they might take you away from your authentic self. um I grew up in a religion that told us what we were. You were told, you are one of the, I don't know how to word this, but this is basically what the religion would teach. You are right. You have the truth more than any other person. So you need to kind of feel a little bad for all these people without the truth, because since they don't have the truth, they're probably going to go to hell. And I don't believe this way at all. Honestly, I hope you guys notice that I don't believe in all that kind of BS, but you know, like, you have the best religion. This is the only way because this religion does all this right. And even when I started pointing it out, because the thing that the religion I grew up in points out is, it was like, of all the Christian denominations, we're the one that follows the Ten Commandments and actually keeps the fourth about the Sabbath. And we keep some of the dietary rules. So we're actually following the commandments. But then when I started seeing other commandments about, like, say, for example, Jewish holy days, where it's like, oh, like, keep these holy days, and God commands this. And I would ask, at church, I'd ask, like, pastors, well, I know we keep the Sabbath, but why don't we keep Passover? Why don't we keep Sukkot? Why don't we keep Rosh Hashanah? Like, the Bible says to do it. Why don't we do that? But we do the seventh day Sabbath, but the Bible says these are my Sabbaths, like a holy convocated time, like, keep these days, you know, and I'm like, why don't we do these? And then I could never get an answer. Or there would be other commandments, like the Bible has 613 commandments in the Old Testament, and I'd ask about them. Why don't we do this one? Why don't we do that one? Why don't we do this one? And nobody could answer my questions. And I was like, I saw the hypocrisy in it, where I was like, okay, we've picked these few to do, but there are all these other ones that nobody wants to actually answer because they can see the hypocrisy in it. That, like, we're saying that we're doing all these things, but we're not doing all of them. We're doing some of them, which is more than what some of the other churches are doing, and then adding all these other traditions onto it. So when I kind of saw that, it kind of, I was raised with a belief system that, like, I was somehow more, uh, like, I should be grateful that I could be close to God. I should be grateful that I have all knowledge about what are the actual right rules. And then when I started going to another service, that actually they actually did, you know, talk about and study the Bible and like study the, talk about the actual other commandments and stuff. That's when I started realizing I'm like, this isn't really for me. Um, but I liked it. I liked the studying aspect of it because I was like, well, these people actually are studying the commandments like in full. They're not being like, well, I'll do this one and that one and that one and that other one, but all these other ones we're not going to even touch them. So they actually tried more. It was a Messianic Jewish congregation, so they're Christian, but they keep the Jewish uh, commandments, and I was really into that. Um, because I had already been studying Hebrew for some years before that, for quite a few years before that. And so I was like, finally, I'm around people who like study Hebrew and practice Hebrew and sing songs in Hebrew and like read the scriptures and study the Old Testament and all this kind of stuff. And I was really into it. And but then even, just being in that Christian setting, I was always taught, when you start meeting people who are of the world, when you start meeting these other people, they're going to make you stumble and you're going to go against your upbringing. So it's probably best to just try to bring them to church, but if they don't want to go to church, probably don't hang out with them. Um and to me, anytime somebody put social restrictions on me, I was never into it. I was like, you're not going to tell me who I'm going to hang out with, so I'd bring all my disheveled friends to church and like they'd be joking in the back and like drinking outside and like smoking in the parking lot and stuff, and it was like whatever, they came to church, like you said, bring my friends, I brought my friends, you know and like that would cause a bit of an issue. um and they didn't feel welcome there, which I understood, so I didn't keep inviting them. I would invite them to events that weren't like so churchy. um but yeah, it was really kind of like, people like to argue too much and like they want to debate stuff and they're not really listening. Like they get too overly like passionate and like upset and like pissed off about it. Like I have a lot of friends that I could talk about religion with and like we're not fighting and arguing. It's like we know that we have different ways of looking at things and we just like to hear the other people's perspective, and that's that. But with these people, it was like they want to argue to the death about stuff that's like, how dare you try to disprove anything or question anything? I was like, this isn't even a discussion. What's the point? If nobody's listening and everybody's shouting, like, I don't want to be in this. And so, but yeah, all that kind of stuff with belief systems, it doesn't really have to be a religion, but they call that, belief systems, judge, and victim those are like a parasite, you know. Um, and it is, because it's like it eats away at stuff where it's like a lot of it isn't based on our authenticity. We mostly sometimes follow these rules and traditions because we don't want to get reprimanded or singled out, but it doesn't really mean that we believe them. Like there's a lot of stuff that I haven't believed for like a really long time, that some of it I don't even mention, but like there's a lot of stuff that I haven't believed for a really long time that I just don't even talk about because I'm like, well, I don't need to believe this because I don't really actually believe in it, but other people who kind of know me might not know that I don't believe that. They just assume I believe in it. And so I just keep it at that because I'm like, well, it's my own personal thing. Like I don't need to like share that. But yeah, guys, it's a lot of stuff to look at. I know we're only going through pages at a time, but it's because usually there's quite a bit to say about these pages. And uh sometimes I don't realize how long I've been talking, but I try to give examples and just kind of put a different spin on it, so it's not just like, oh, I'm reading you literally from these pages of this book, and try to put kind of examples so people can kind of visually see like, oh, that's possibly one way to look at this. Like my things that I'm saying are just examples that I come up with that I think are relevant to what I'm reading. I don't know for sure if it is, and there's probably other ways of looking at it, but I like to add a little take to it because it's like, to me, it's a lot more interesting, um, to kind of like apply things a little bit more. But I got some other stuff I need to go get to, but hopefully this is some helpful food for thought. And with that, thanks for listening.